Thank you so much, Sarka. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to invite Professor Dharm P.S. Bhawuk again. He'll be taking the keynote session from Namaste, sir. He will be taking the keynote session from 11 to 12, which will be chaired by Professor Rajbir Singh. It shall follow the session which happened in the morning from 8. Over to you, sir.
Okay, so let's share the PowerPoint. Let's see.
So welcome again, Professor Bhawuk.
G, trying to share the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
No, that was not right. Can you see the PowerPoint?
Not yet, not yet.
Not. Okay, so then still need to go share. I'm not seeing the share button. Oh yeah, I see it now. Good, let's see. Okay. Can you see it now or still not there?
Not yet.
I don't see it myself. So yours is paused. Why is my screen sharing paused? Stop here. Okay, let's go back again. Share.
Yes, we can see it now.
Yes, good. Thank you. Present mode, where are you? Present mode. Okay, so let's connect in silence again for a minute. Close your eyes and you can open your eyes slowly. हिंदी में बात करने का आज्ञा हुआ था।
जी जी।
सब आदमी हिंदी समझते हैं कि should I stick to English?
आप थोड़ा मिक्स भी कर सकते हैं सर।
हाँ।
So that सब लोगों के लिए इंफॉर्मेटिव रहेगा।
Okay.
अगर आपको असुविधा ना हो तो हम लोग जो है अंग्रेजी हिंदी मिश्रित।
The construct in Hindi Sanskrit will have to be used in Hindi Sanskrit anyway. You will see,
नाम तो रहेगा
see that.
जी
So,
जी।
my marching order was to talk about Western psychology and Indian knowledge system.
जी।
And when I thought about it, then I said, and you will see why. So I said, no, let's start with Bharatiya Gyan Sampada or Paschimi Manovigyan.
ठीक।
So I want to talk about 4 things, 4 ideas, and how. So first I'll talk about concept of self in Western psychology, but how Manas, Buddhi, Ahankar, Atman in Indian knowledge system would relate to concept of self in Western psychology. Then I'll talk about briefly about Deskal Patra in Indian knowledge system and how personality in Western psychology works, and therefore it will not work. So I'm going to make some really strong statements. Personality psychology does not work in India. It is simply garbage in, garbage out. If you give me a questionnaire in English, I will fill it out because I'm a bilingual and you will know my personality, but it does not mean anything. My behavior will be guided by Des, Kal, and Patra. Dharm in Indian knowledge system and ethics in Western psychology. Western philosophers have been so arrogant to say that India does not have ethics. Indian philosophy does not have ethics. If you think about the Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, it starts with Dharma. We don't miss Artha, money. We don't miss Kama, desire. And we don't miss Moksha. So, Dharma is not ethics, ethics is not Dharma, but everybody in India understands Dharma. So there is no reason to talk about ethics in India. People understand what their Dharma is, and we'll talk about it. And then śraddhā. So if we start with an Indian knowledge system, Indian construct, then we'll see that there is no parallel in the Western world. There will be so many constructs that we will need to use to understand śraddhā, which is in the Western psychology. So these are the 4 points that I want to cover. And we'll see how we do with time. So I can do fast, but here is the take home. So should we run out of time or you have to leave in 5 minutes, at least here is what the conclusion is. We need to start with Bharatiya idea, construct and theory. If we start with Western idea, we will never come to Bharatiya concept. This is a strong claim I'm making, but I'm happy to have a debate on that. You start with personality, you will get personality. Sankhya is not personality. Sattva, Rajas, Tamas is not personality. It is guna. Tamas is not dosh. It is guna. People confuse. People forget. People think there is Ram and Ravan in you and you need to remove Ravan and have Ram. No, there always will be tamas. It's impossibility to remove tamas if you believe in Sankhya Darshan. Studying translations of Bharatiya text in English will not work. Period. Yogananda ji, Vivekananda ji, they were enlightened people. They were talking to English-speaking people. So they used mind. They always understood what manas was. Swatmaneva sada sthitva mano nashyati yogina. By staying in self all the time, the yogi destroys manas. Try to take that to Western psychology. And if you think it is only in Vivek Chudamani, it is for, high-flying sannyasis. Even my mother-in-law says, ये मन को मार लिए हैं. That basically means मन पे control है. तो मनो नश्यति योगिना विवेक चूड़ामणि में भी है. मन मार लिया है. Colloquial use भी है. So we use colloquially, and we also have in Vivek Chudamani. So studying translation will not work. We have to go to the original text. Good news, any Bharatiya language will work. I mentioned that earlier. Whatever language you have proficiency in, use that language, that will work. And to understand Indian psychology, Bharatiya psychology, Manovigyan, we are both academics, micro world, research, and sadhakas or practitioners, life world. we are connected in both the worlds. We cannot do psychology following the Western method where you only study other people. You have to study yourself and also study other people. So we are not saying you shouldn't study other people, but you can't not study yourself. That is not the Indian method. So that takes us to Manas, Buddhi, Ahankar, Atman in Indian knowledge system and concept of self in Western psychology. If you were in the previous session, I talked about how in verse 340, we have Sri Krishna tells there are senses. Senses are weaker than manas. Manas is stronger than sanas. Senses, buddhi is stronger than manas. Atman is stronger than buddhi. So we have a concept of self where there is physical self. So schematic simply shows the physical self with a dark, strong line, unbroken line. Senses with a lighter one because there are 5 of them. And by the way, the physical self is not only the 5 senses. We also have the bones and the marrow and the and if you think that Indians did not think about it, pick up any kavacham, and you go from head to toe, and you talk about blood and mud, marrow, and then also sattva, rajas, tamas, and everything. So in Indian worldview, we have a complex concept of self where physical, psychological, social, everything is included. Now, think about it. In the West, we are now talking about levels of analysis. We are talking about multi-level theories. Whereas the Western psychology has been simply focusing on mind and mind-related stuff. Whereas Indian psychology has always focused on everything. So not only in Bhagavad Gita, but we go to the Upanishad, then in Taittiriya, we have the 5 sheaths or 5 koshas. So Annamaya is the physical, Pranamaya is... Now, Pranamaya is so difficult to explain. It's not about breathing. And it is not about breathing only. It does all kinds of things. That's why we have pranayam as an entire field in itself. And pranayam is not only for Ayurveda, but it's also for sadhakas, for practitioners. And then we have Manomaya kosh, we have Vijnanamaya kosh, and then we have Anandamaya kosh. So this is the concept of self. We can also call it a theory of self because in Bhagavad Gita 7.4, Sri Krishna brings in the idea of Sankhya Darshana. And so we also add then Ahankar. Adi Shankara also adds Chitta to it, but I think Chitta is really Atman, that's consciousness. So do we really need Chitta or not? So we are not going to debate with Adi Shankara. He's not here to defend himself anyway. In Yoga Vasishtha and other texts, we do see that Manas and Chit are used interchangeably. In yoga also, yoga chitta vritti nirodha. So chitta there is manasa. And so do we need chit? It's not there in 7.4 of Bhagavad Gita, so I'm probably good. But ahankar is added and it adds something to understanding the self. Now let's go to the Western psychology. So this is something that I have studied as a cross-cultural psychologist, interdependent and independent concept of self. So briefly, I take an hour to discuss this, but briefly, collectivists have interdependent concept of self, which you see on the left side. Individualists have independent concept of self, which you see on the right side. One of the difference you notice is that individualists, the self is schematically presented by a solid line. So you have a concrete sense of this is me and this is not me. So self, children, spouse, parents, boss, friend, neighbor, siblings, these are all different. Whereas for collectivist, so the first thing we notice is the concept of self is represented by broken line, which basically means they have an amorphous sense of self. I am not bounded by just this physical body. And you can see, because we have Atman and we have Manas and Buddhi, I'm not bounded by the physical self only. And if you think about Anandamaya Kosh, Vijnanamaya Kosh, Manomaya Kosh, Pranamaya Kosh, I'm not bounded by only this physical body. The second difference we notice is there is collectivists have a smaller social distance. There is a note in the diagram between themselves and other people compared to individualists. So that shared space basically says, when I think about my father and mother, and even if they are gone, they have passed away, they are still there, because I have a sense of I belong to them. My behavior is guided by what they would have liked me to do, what they would have think it's not proper. The same thing with brother and sister, siblings, spouse. There is a shared self. Now, think about the spouse and the self. For individualists, there is a bigger social distance. It's not a shared self. In nucleus family, that distance is smaller, but when a divorce takes place, people do go their own way. And then the child becomes closer to the self than the spouse. Now, the reason divorce would be a very difficult concept for India, for collectivist cultures, is because how do I separate myself from my wife? Think about all the relational terms. It's not only the husband and wife separate. Now my mother-in-law is separate from me, and for my wife, her mother-in-law is separated. So the separation means it's breaking a number of relationships. You may not like your husband, but you like your devar and nanad. Why should you break that relationship? And what happens to that relationship? So divorce is a complicated issue in the Indian worldview, if you think from this web of relationship that people share. So Western psychology is happy with concept of self. When we talk about individualism, collectivism, we take the concept of self, independent, interdependent, and then we relate it to how people interact in group. Individualists think about their own goals. Collectivists think about the goal of their in-group. Individualists don't differentiate between in-group and out-group. Collectivists differentiate between in-group and out-group. To give you an example, an experiment conducted in Illinois, Professor Carnival asked last name Asians and last name Caucasian students to bring a friend to the lab. They negotiated, they interacted in a negotiation task with the friend and with a confederate provided by the researcher. The individualists did not make a difference in negotiation with those two, meaning that they did not give a special discount to their friend. The friend came with them to the lab, but no difference. The collectivists, last name Yamaguchi and Bay and others from East Asia and India and other countries, they made a significant, statistically significant difference in making a deal, giving a better deal to the friend they brought to the lab. So this is in-group, out-group differentiation. How they interact with others, collectivists look at all the relationship as long-term, and they don't believe in equal exchange. Individualists believe in equal exchange and short-term relationship. So Kamleshji takes me out for lunch. In a week or two, I will take her out to lunch. If she took me out to a nice restaurant, I'll take her out to a nice restaurant. That's individualist way. Equal exchange, short-term, rational exchange. For collectivist, Kamleshji may do something for me, I may do something else for her, and this will linger on for years. So there is no, we also do mental note of who did what, but at the same time, we both like working with each other. We like the company of each other, or we appreciate each other, and therefore we do things for each other. So they are relational and they are long-term oriented. When it comes to interacting with the society, individualists do what they want to do. They are attitude, value, belief driven. Collectivists, on the other hand, are driven by their norm. So all of this is explained by, is founded on the concept of self. And that's it. This is social psychology. Whether it is 101 or at PhD level, that's what it is. And you can bring all other variables, but the self remains that. Not for the Indians. For Bharatiya, now think about, if you are aware of Nirvana Shatkam, I will sing it for you later, but we can use all these, whatever Adi Shankara said, we can capture it in the concept of self. So there is elements of physical self, mano buddhi ahankara chittani naham, mind, wisdom, ego. Now I'm doing loose translation: intellect, ears, tongue, nose, eyes. You can pick up all the concrete things, vital forces, 5 vayus, 7 elements that make human body, 5 sheets of human body, voice, hand, feet, generative organs. He lists all kinds of physical elements. And he says, basically, neti, neti, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this. Then he also identifies elements of social self. So earth, ether, fire, air, hatred, passion, greed, delusion, pride, jealousy, pursuit of duty, wealth, desire, salvation, merit, sin, happiness, sorrow, sacred chants, visiting holy places, studying the Vedas, death, doubt, caste, father, mother, see, father, mother, brother, sister, friend, teacher, student, everything is listed. And then what does he say? Chidananda Rupam, Rupa Shivoham, Shivoham. So I'm Chidananda Rup, Chit Ananda Rup, and I'm Shiva. So without, and then he also in the last one, he says, Ahang Nirvikalpo, I'm without an alternative. Ahang Nirvikalpo, Nirakara Rupo, I'm formless. Vivutvacha Sarvatra Sarvendriyanam, I'm everywhere. And Nacha Asangatang, I'm not detachment. Naiva Mukti, I'm not freedom. And then what am I? Chidananda Rupa Shivoham, Shivoham. So you can see a Vedantin like Adi Shankara, a sannyasi like Adi Shankara is giving us a model of self where we can see elements of physical self, we can see elements of social self, but we also see the elements of metaphysical self. So this is how you do textual analysis. So you can see, I've written a section on concept of self using these Nirvana Shatkam, but you can write a paper elaborating on how concept of self is. And you can also do the comparison with East and West. So this is, now if you continue this further, then what we see is elements of independent social self, I'm intelligent, hardworking, bright, etc. Element of interdependent self, father, mother, brother, sister, etc. We do this. But then there are also elements of growing self. I'm wealthy, I own a big house, drive a luxury car, I'm famous, I'm the best in my profession, etc. And then there are ecological factors affecting growth of self, ego-enhancing objects. So the luxury goods like Louis Vuitton say that they are ego-enhancing products. That's why I don't buy luxury products. Keeping up with the Jones syndrome, and conspicuous consumption. So all of that leads to a growing self. Now, this is all social self growing. But if we come to so you see the self is expanding from here, the outer circle is expanding. That's all we get from the Western psychology. If you come to Indian psychology, then what we see is there is a social self ever expanding on the left side, schematically presented by solid lines. But we also have an internal journey. And in that also now the self starts to expand by shrinking. So by doing neti neti, as Adi Shankara says, mano buddhi ahankara chittani naham. So I'm not this. Na dharmo, na chartho, na kamo, na moksha. I don't want dharma, artha, kama, moksha. He even gives up the the Purusharthas. So when you start doing neti, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this, your social self starts to shrink, you start growing inward, you become calm, you experience calmness, and then what happens? You become one with the universe. So it's an interesting expansion inward. So you can see the West only looks at the right side. The self is expanding infinitely and ad nauseum. So it's external achievement oriented, it's me, more. Whereas in India, we have this also. We believe in artha and kama, we achieve this, but we are guided by dharma. And because we are guided by dharma, we also start going on the left side, or in the internal journey starts, where we are using neti and idam namama. Every time you do a yajna, you are always saying idam varunaya, idam namama. This is for Varuna Dev, not for me. It's not for me. So that process helps us progress on an internal journey. So you can see the Western psychology can only deal with the left side. It can't deal with the, sorry, on the right side, it can't deal with the internal journey. It's a different way we'll have to look at it. In Western psychology, we have the concept of self-efficacy, which connects elements of independent self and elements of growing self. It connects the social self-expansion. The question remains, how will that self-efficacy work for the internal journey, where we are supposed to say neti? Self-efficacy is about being efficacious in doing something. Vairagya is about getting detached. So what will be self-efficacy in Vairagya? This question would not interest Professor Bandura, but this would interest us, because we have so much to learn from our enlightened people, from their life. And what can we learn from them to enrich our life? So this is a good time to take a place. You can see how Indian concept of self will act, will inform us differently, will think differently, will act differently. And so the question becomes, so how do you measure it? So now we can, at what level are we measuring? And what is the dependent variable that we are interested in, that we are trying to predict? I think this should be useful in addiction study, because each of the senses, with attachment to its own subject, can create addiction. So we could be doing binge watching of movies or TV series, and that's attachment through eyes and ears. We could be eating too much and gain weight, become obese. That's about taste and tongue, not having control. And if you think about it, part of the tapas is always to be alpahari. In fact, we define a student as alpahari. Kagachesta, vako dhyanam, swana nidra tathaivacha, alpahari, grihatyagi, vidyarthi, panchalakshana. And this is Niti Upadesh, but this is the guide for the student. But this reflects on, if we do this, then we won't get addicted to the test. So we, depending on what we are interested in study, the Indian model would provide us a ready access in the Indian context to understand those variables. So my PhD from University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. So this is mainstream psychology department. My mentor was a professor there. He was a cultural researcher, so he appreciated that we are trying to impose the psychology of 1% population of the world, which is America, on 99% of the population of the world, which is the rest of the world. And the idea of a person acts the same way, whatever the situation. And if you push people, they will tell you that, no, that's not what it means. But then why are we studying personality? So personality are traits, which means we act in a fixed way, whatever the situation. Now, You talk to anybody in India, they'll say, no, that's not how it works. My behavior will be decided by what is the context. Am I in a rural part or a city part? Am I in an organization or at home? So and at a higher level, am I in Gujarat or Tamil Nadu or New Delhi? So this, and then Kal, what is the time? And then there's always the concept of appropriate time. And you can see that appropriate time becomes muhurt when it comes to doing auspicious tasks. So Kal is important. And then we have a whole shastra of, figuring out what is the best time to do things. And then Patra. So Patra is both me and who I'm interacting with. So in Ayurveda, the doctor looks at the Patra, meaning me, and decides what the treatment should be. In interpersonal interaction, I will interact depending on who I'm interacting with. So if I have to give the same message to my father and to my son, I will deliver the message differently. I'll give you a concrete example. We live in a high rise in Honolulu. We have a $500 fine if we throw anything from our balcony. $500 fine if you throw a toothbrush, anything. So I sit down with my sons when they're young and say, okay, we are not going to throw anything. You understand, it's 500. So it's very firm. When my parents are visiting, now I'm requesting them. And so my father said, I don't think it's that big a deal. And then I had to be firm and said, नहीं ये बहुत बड़ा डील है ठीक है आप फेंकिए फाइन हमको देना होगा message went home. So the person you are communicating with, the person you are interacting with, that will shape our behavior. So to me, it does not make sense to study personality. Now, if you start with personality, remember what I said, you will be stuck with personality. So people have developed personality measure based on sattva, rajas, tamas. If you ask me, it just does not make sense. We can study the gunas of people and predict. We don't need to bring the word personality. See the fundamental error. Personality is fixed. Sattva, rajas, tamas is variable. I will say it one more time. Personality is fixed. These are my traits. Sattva, rajas, tamas is variable. And all my life it is going to be variable. I will have sattva strong sometimes, then rajas and tamas will go down. I will have rajas strong, then sattva and tamas will go down. I will have tamas strong sometime, then sattva and rajas will go down. This is the nature of the gunas. Guna gunesu vartante. Sri Krishna says the gunas act in the guna. You are not the actor. See, this is a deep understanding of the self. This is not about personality. So if we start with personality, we are stuck in personality. Start with gunas, but study it with the wisdom of Sankhya Darshan. Not trying to find an Indian personality. There is no Indian personality. And I'm making strong statements. The bilingual Indian, the urban Indian may have a personality. Okay, so whatever I say is meaningless. You can say that, but culture is going to creep inside. We may not even understand it and it will creep inside. So we should be careful. I mentioned earlier in the introduction itself that some people say India does not have, Indian darshan does not have ethics. Oh, by the way, India does not have philosophy. India has Shastra, and none of our Shastra, the Ved and Vedangas, talk about philosophy. There is no philosophicals. All texts have philosophy, the way the West looks at philosophy. So Bhagavad Gita has philosophy, but Bhagavad Gita has a lesson. The lesson is from Sri Krishna to Sri Arjuna in that specific context, but other people can also learn from it, and other people have learned from it. So we don't have philosophy, we don't have ethics, because we look at the world differently. So think about dharma. In China, Confucius gave 5 relationships as the fundamental of social structure, social harmony, social action, interaction. So the relationship between emperor and subject, father and son, husband and wife, older sibling, younger sibling, and friend. And the way it was presented, that the friend is the only horizontal relationship and all 4 other are vertical relationship. I don't think even Confucius would have said there was a relationship between husband and wife was vertical, because if you look at Dao De Zheng, Lao Tzu, it's very interesting. So man-woman relationship is never hierarchical. That's a debate for different time. But in China, we have these 5 relationships. Look at India. We have Matri Dharma, we have Pitri Dharma, we have Guru Dharma. So this is not one-way street. It's always in a relationship. So my dharma toward my teacher requires my teacher to have his dharma towards student. So he's or she is supposed to nurture me, teach me, give his or her knowledge to me at no cost, to my fulfillment, for my fulfillment. The idea is for, when it comes to knowledge, in the Indian worldview, it's very clear that not being able to pass knowledge to other people is a curse. If I'm enlightened and I cannot help other people be enlightened, my life is a burden. I must pass on my knowledge. So that is the Guru Dharma. You help the student achieve his or her best. And the student does by Guru Seva. And if you study the music industry, you will notice that when a musician, however famous he or she may be, however accomplished he may, when they take the name of their guru, they touch their ears. You're not supposed to even utter the name of your teacher. And that's why they apologize. When we step in a river, we apologize. So this captures the dharma of in relationship. We also know that it's not only the duty of dharma for the son towards the mother also, and mother's dharma is almost like, that is the highest. She is the most giving and forgiving. So everybody knows that. It's almost so much so that Adi Shankara wrote, Kuputro jayate kochidapi kumata na bhavati. And everybody thinks it's just traditional wisdom, but this is something that Adi Shankar wrote in Kshama Prarthana. You can find it at the end of Durga Saptashti. The same thing will happen between friends. So think about Panchatantra. It's all about, there's a whole section on Mitra Lav. So there is the dharma of the Mitra. There is the dharma of the king. So if you think about Maharaj Shivi, he is tested by the gods, and a falcon comes chasing a pigeon, and the pigeon takes shelter with Maharaj Shivi. And so the falcon says, but you have taken my food away. So he says, I'll give you another falcon. He says, but that's not right. You're giving one from, why this falcon and is special and that is not? So Maharaj Shivi says, okay, I'll give you equivalent of this pigeon from my own body. And so he starts taking meat out of his body and then his limbs, and the falcon is too heavy. So he goes and sits on the other side of the balance, and then the balance goes down. And then the falcon becomes Indradev and the pigeon becomes Agnidev, and they say you have passed the test. But this is the dharma of a Raja, a king. We will never understand if, I hope there are some Indians have kings whose duty is to protect. A king is Praja Vatsal. The king is the father. The queen is the mother of Praja. You should read the biography of Ahalyabai. She did not take pay from the state. Her father-in-law gave her some land, that the income from that she used to support herself. The state exchequer was not her personal money. She only used it for people's good. That is the concept of dharma. Did we stop sharing? Can you still see the PowerPoint? Hello?
No, sir.
Okay, you can't see the PowerPoint. That's what I thought. So let me go here. Let's here, share. Okay, can you see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you can hear me?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Okay, so we have to start with dharma. We cannot start with ethics to understand Indian psychology or the psychology of Indian people. So coming back to Marxism, Marx saw serfdom and landlords. In India, we had kings, and king's job was to protect his or her subjects. So this was a different relationship. There was no serfdom. How much should the king tax? Just like you take honey from the honeybee, just like you take milk from the cow, so that the calf is also nourished and you are also nourished. That is how the king is supposed to tax. So there was no serfdom, and therefore there was no need for Marxism. Okay, so 300 years of British rule and a few hundred years of Muslim rule messed us up. But culturally, we still have our roots. So if we understand our roots, we would not need to follow Marxism. So again, if we start with the concept of dharma, we can study Marxism from Indian perspective. It's 2:19, so we have about 10 minutes. Instead of going into, so I won't get into the detail of Śraddhā, but I'll give you examples of, so I need to share with you what is Śraddhā, so the conclusion here. So by doing the analysis of all the verses of Bhagavad Gita, I came up with this conclusion. Śraddhā is the opposite of finding faults. With Śraddhā, effort and restraint, Jnana and moksha is achieved. Śraddhā is the highest of virtue with everlasting outcomes. Śraddhā is grace from Sri Krishna and divine. Misplaced Śraddhā is still placed in the Lord. Sri Krishna is so generous and kind. He says, whoever you have Śraddhā for, it all comes to me. Devotees' Śraddhā is the highest. Śraddhā and gunas, as is Śraddhā, so is the person. So whatever is my Śraddhā, that is the kind of person I become. Now see, that's the angle on personality, if you like. But again, that's not personality. If we study Śraddhā, so if my Śraddhā is for my country, so now you can see my behavior. I will be always focused on the good of the country. Extend it to lower level, if my śraddhā is for my organization, how will I deal with that? We'll take that in a minute. Tapa with śraddhā is sattvic. Yajna without śraddhā is tamasic. See, we are getting all these complex terms. Śraddhā leads to mukti or moksha or desirable lok. Absence of śraddhā means agyan, means shamsay. You have doubt, and that leads to destruction, leads to birth and death. So I found these 9 characteristics of śraddhā. So based on that, so I'm skipping the detailed analysis. So śraddhā and interpersonal relationship, think about it. There are so many Western theories of interpersonal relationship and exchange, but they never have śraddhā there. Now, my relationship with my parents, with my teachers, with my elders, and maybe my superiors in organization will have śraddhā. So I will have śraddhā and they will have sneh for me. They'll have love for me. So śraddhā, sneh becomes the dynamic in interpersonal relationship. And Professor Jabalov Prasad Sinha has written about śraddhā and sneh. Śraddhā and organizations. Śraddhā may be more relevant than organizational commitment. For 30 years, I've been telling people organizational commitment does not make sense in the Indian worldview. Why? Because it starts with commitment. And I'm sure the young people in the audience can relate to it because you are sophisticated bilinguals. You have adopted the meaning of commitment in your own life. When I got married, I was committed from day one. My wife was committed from day one. Commitment does not make sense. Trust does not make sense in the Indian worldview. I mean, you can translate and say Vishwas, but really what trust means, the social science definition of trust is vulnerability. I'm vulnerable to somebody. I'm not vulnerable to my wife. My wife is not vulnerable to me. I'm not vulnerable to my friend. My friend, my dharma is to act in a certain way toward my wife, my son, my friend, etc. So commitment does not make sense. Organizational commitment does not make sense. But śraddhā for your boss will make sense. And then śraddhā for your organization can also make sense because organization becomes an entity that gives me livelihood. It supports my family. So now I'm indebted to the organization. So that rin concept in India will be useful in relationship with organization instead of commitment. Then you can say that, oh, that's what affective commitment is. That's what normative commitment is. No, it doesn't make sense. Start with śraddhā and use the concept of rin. We can understand what is organizational commitment in the West better. Śraddhā and LMX, leader-member exchange. So naturally, the member has śraddhā for leader and the leader has a sneh for it. We should study leader-member exchange relationship in organization by using śraddhā. Śraddhā and whistleblowing behavior. When will I blow a whistle? When I have śraddhā for the principle. That is what Mahabharata battle was for. People negotiated. They were happy to take 5 villages, but they were said, you don't get anything without fighting. And that's why the battle took place. So a person will try everything, and if it doesn't work, is going to blow the whistle, is going to go publicly, and that is basically declaration of war in the public domain. Śraddhā and ethics again. My duty towards, so when you think about it, śraddhā and rin will come together to explain a lot of my relationship rather than ethics. Okay, I'll stop here. I already told you the take-home lesson that I wanted you to have. So I can repeat that one more time if you want. We need to start with Bharatiya idea, construct theory. If we start with Western idea, we'll never get there. Studying translation. If it didn't come across clearly, So if you read Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga or Bhakti Yoga, I mean, there's Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga is the title of the book, but after that, devotion and other words are used. Śraddhā is not used. And so, but if you go to Narad Bhakti Sutra or Sandilya Bhakti Sutra, you will see Śraddhā comes right in the beginning. So we understand bhakti by using Śraddhā. And if you translate Śraddhā as faith, then again the meaning is distorted. So that's why we have to use original text, original terms, and we can use any Bharatiya language that will work for us. Okay, so we have a few minutes for question answer, and we can stay over time. If you have questions, I'll stop here. Rajbir Singh ji, sorry, your
Yes,
turn.
I'm lucky that I've been able to attend both the lectures. And of course, there is a direct connection between the two. In the first, we try to learn कि कैसे हम भारतीय एक तरीके से अपने मनोविज्ञान को स्थापित कर सकते हैं, उसका एक पद्धति क्या है, मेथोडोलॉजी क्या है। और अब का जो ये हमने आपका जो संदेश सुना, इसमें मुझे एक चीज तो लगी कि हमने प्रयास किया है कि हम कुछ पैरेलल्स ढूंढें वेस्टर्न फिलॉसफी में, हमारे जो अपने कंस्ट्रक्ट्स हैं, और उस प्रयास में हम पाते हैं कि सही में तो पैरेलल नहीं है, कहीं भी पैरेलल नहीं है। जो हमारी अपनी जो भारतीय मनोविज्ञान के जो कंस्ट्रक्ट्स हैं, वो भले ही हम कहीं ना कहीं नाम से एक दूसरे को भले ही कोशिश करें पैरेलल ढूंढने की, बट इन फैक्ट द इनहेरेंट मीनिंग, सिमेंटिक्स एंड द प्रैक्टिसेस वो बहुत ही वाइडर हैं, बहुत ही अलग हैं। और लेकिन ये मुझे जरूरी भी लगता है कि हम कहीं ना कहीं कोशिश तो करें कि हम वेस्टर्न वर्ल्ड के जो कंसेप्ट और कंस्ट्रक्ट्स हैं, जब भी हम अपना कोई नया यहाँ अपने जो विधि आपने पहले लेक्चर में बताई, उस विधि से जब भी हम अपने ओरिजिनल टेक्स्ट में कुछ नया कंस्ट्रक्ट्स बनाने का प्रयास करें, चाहे वो मॉडल हो, चाहे वो हम कोई थ्योरी ढूंढ के लाएं, लेकिन मुझे लगा कि हमें बनाना नहीं है, हमें तो केवल ढूंढना मात्र है। एक चीज ये लग रही है कि इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम इज सो रिच, वो अभी हमने उसको उस तरीके से एक्सप्लोर नहीं किया है। सो आई थिंक वी नीड ऑफ कोर्स अ साइकोलॉजिस्ट माइंड टू एक्सप्लोर आवर ओन इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम, और उसमें हमको कितनी चीजें नजर आएंगी, और जब हम उसको वेस्टर्न साइकोलॉजी या वेस्टर्न फिलॉसफी से कंपेयर करने लगेंगे, तो हमें ये ज्ञान होता है कि वो कितना रिच है, वो कितना अपने आप में इंटीग्रेटेड है। उन्होंने हमें एक तरीके से वो लाइफ उसके अंदर है, तो कितना खूबसूरत तरीके से हम धर्म और नीति को देख सकते हैं। तो ये एक मैच कहना कि हमारे पास एथिक्स नहीं है, तो ये सही में उन्हीं लोगों का ऐसा विचार है जिन्हें धर्म के बारे में मालूम ही नहीं है। और सही में श्रद्धा जैसा कंस्ट्रक्ट मैं समझता हूं कि आमतौर से हम लोग बहुत ही सामान्य तौर से इस वर्ड को भी यूज करते हैं, और मैंने तो पाया बहुत टाइम पर हम इसको अपने से कहीं बहुत ऊंची चीज जिसको हम बहुत रिस्पेक्ट देते हैं, या कभी जिसको आप गुरु भी कहते हैं, या कहीं हमारा जो विश्वास है कति बहुत ऊपर गया हुआ है, तो सॉर्ट ऑफ स्पिरिचुअल जो हायर अप से हम कंपेयर करते हैं, और वहां हम ये भी कहते हैं कि वो ऑटोमेटिकली वो श्रद्धा जैसा भाव आ जाता है। सो आई थिंक दैट द भाव ऑफ श्रद्धा, आपने 9 उसके कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स बताए, वो अपने आप में बहुत रिच है। और ये सही में कम से कम मैं तो ये समझ पाया हूँ कि जो 2 घंटे मैंने आपके साथ बिताए, और मेरी बहुत सारी भ्रांतियां तो दूर ही हो गई हैं, उससे बहुत कुछ।
एक बार बहुत अच्छा शब्द आपने प्रयोग किया प्रोफेसर साहब,
हाँ जी,
भाव।
हाँ,
तो
यस,
भाव जो है, अब उसको आप इमोशन से शुरू करेंगे तो भाव समझ ही नहीं पाएंगे।
बिल्कुल सही, बिल्कुल सही, वो कुछ ऊपर है, कुछ अलग है।
तो भाव समझने के लिए अब हम
हाँ
लोग
जी,
के अनेक भाव होते हैं। मातृभाव होता है, पितृभाव, बच्चों के लिए स्नेह का जो भाव है, गाय और बछड़े का जो है वहाँ एक हम भाव में फिर एज ए ह्यूमन बीइंग सोशली कंस्ट्रक्ट करते हैं। लेकिन भाव चीज जो है, और फिर उसमें नाट्यशास्त्र में हम जाएंगे तो हमें वहां पर मिलेगा कि
हाँ,
नव
वो
रस मिलेंगे।
एक्सप्रेशन है,
तो
वो
तो इसलिए
एक्सप्रेशन है।
लेकिन इमोशन से शुरू करेंगे तो फिर अटक जाएंगे।
हाँ, नहीं, ये हमारे लिए तो अंतःकरण ही है
जी
ये कहीं अंतःकरण से ही निकला है।
जी
वो कभी कभी मुझे लगता है मानव जो खुद इसका अनुभव कर रहा है उसके लिए भी इसकी व्याख्या करना, उसका विवरण करना बड़ा मुश्किल है।
जी
तो
जी
क्योंकि वो तो एक अनुभूति है, वो तो उस व्यक्ति विशेष को ही हो रही है।
जी
तो खैर, मैं तो अपनी तरफ से कहूंगा कि जो कॉन्सेप्ट वेस्टर्न कॉन्सेप्ट्स हैं वो ठीक है, और वो कोई ऐसा नहीं है 1% लोग 99% को जबरदस्ती थोप रहे हैं।
राइट
कहीं ना कहीं कुछ समकालीन और समझिए भूतकाल में ऐसे फैक्टर रहे, लेकिन ये रिवाइवल है, बहुत अच्छा है। और एक अच्छा समय भी है, क्योंकि यहाँ भारत में भी जो नई शिक्षा नीति आई है, उस नई शिक्षा नीति में इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम को उसमें बल दिया गया है, उसको
जी
कहा जा रहा है। तो एक
जी
तरीके से नया ओरिएंटेशन बन रहा है कि
जी
लोगों का इस तरफ झुकाव बनेगा, और
जी
अब हम उस पे और अधिक विश्वास भी करने लगे हैं।
जी
तो जितने भी लोगों ने आज ये संदेश दोनों लेक्चर्स में आपके सुने होंगे, उनको जरूर अपने इस अथाह भंडार जो हमारा ज्ञान का है, इसके प्रति लगाव होगा और लोग उसकी तरफ बढ़ेंगे। आपने सुबह के लेक्चर में मेथोडोलॉजी बताई जो मुश्किल नहीं है।
जी
आपने तो इतनी छूट दी भाई, किसी भी भाषा में हो, कैसे भी हो।
जी
और
जी
दूसरा मैंने पाया कि भाई हमें तो बनाना तो कुछ है नहीं, हमें तो ढूंढना मात्र है। वी
जी
ओनली टू एक्सप्लोर,
जी
और उसके बाद उसको समझने वाली बात है। सो मुझे तो ये एक बहुत ही अच्छा अनुभव रहा, ये बहुत सुखद भी रहा, और बड़ा मुझे खुशी है कि मैं आज इसका हिस्सा बन पाया हूँ। सो वी हैव 6 क्वेश्चंस एंड आंसर्स। आई
जी
थिंक एकता वाज कोऑर्डिनेटिंग इट। एकता,
जी
Yes, sir. हाँ,
हाँ, तो बच्चे
first,
ये आई थिंक वन बाय वन आप कुछ कोशिश करें। प्रोफेसर भावुक वुड ट्राई टू हेल्प द पीपल हु हैव सम क्वेरीज। प्लीज गो
definitely.
अहेड।
Thank you
या
so much, first of all, for your knowledgeable insights. I'll read out the question from the QAN box, which have been made by the participants. One is, can you provide your insights about how Indian knowledge system talks about being with the self? Should we be self-critical or kind towards self?
okay. So I'll try to answer the question. You'll have to force me to not to become a guru, because when you get old, you tend to answer the question like a teacher. So push me to also think theoretically. So should we be self-critical or should we be compassionate? So here we have two aspects. Let's start with compassion. So compassion is necessary, and it did not really come from Buddhism, because we had a culture before Buddhadev, a few thousand years, and he basically used some of the ideas that already existed. So I'm not putting Buddhism down or Buddhadev down, but the idea is not uh, only limited to Buddhism. So compassion has to be for everybody. So daya sarva bhuteshu. So we know this. Now, because everybody here is positive psychology oriented, if you cultivate daya toward everybody, just close your eyes and imagine you only have daya for everybody, and that everybody includes sarva bhuteshu, for trees, for animals, for people, for relationships. So if you only have daya, you have become daya murti. Now tell me, will a daya murti be critical of himself or herself?
No.
Right? So this is one way of answering it. But there is another aspect also in our culture. Every sadhana starts with yam and niyam. And so if you think about the yam, ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha, and you go to niyam, shauch, santosh, tap, swadhyay, ishwar, pranidhan. Sometimes people are superficial and they think that yoga is atheist. They forget Ishwar Pranidhan in Niyam. So, and that is your foundation. So what does the foundation tell us? In that question, I'm pushing myself, trying to answer theoretically now. So, Daya Sarva Bhuteshu makes you Daya Murti, and you know now you cannot be critical. But for self-progress, we have to be unrelenting. That's what Yam and Niyam are. Shauch, Manasa Vacha Karmana. Tapas. I may add here, our culture has talked about tapas for thousands of years. Emotional intelligence does not make sense to me. Tapas makes sense to me. Delayed gratification. If that is not tapas, what is it? What does delayed gratification mean? Subah jaldi uth jana. Right? Nindra ka tyag karna. Delayed gratification. Gratification is pade raho. Keep lying down. But delaying the gratification, get your sleep in the evening, at night. So in our worldview, we are relentlessly critical of our behavior. And that is what leads to internal progress. So this either or, should we be critical or should we be compassionate? Now you can see we are both. Daya sarva bhuteshu, but relentlessly critical of my own behavior. So ahimsa will be manasa vacha karmana. Aparigraha is basically not collecting anything. That anything can be also ideas, not only material things, emotional things. So I hope that answers the first question. And you can see how in the Indian worldview, we are kind of, inside, outside, always consistent.
Yes, definitely, sir. Thank you for your input, and I believe it does answers the question. Another question is by Cheryl Jolly. It says, "Thank you for this enriching talk, sir. I wanted to know how Indian knowledge system sees the concept of self-esteem. I had administered the Rosenberg scale for self-esteem among Indian college students, but upon data analysis, I found that this construct is very much community-oriented in the Indian context, and hence I could not arrive at the right interpretation. What are your views on it? What is a good grounding to develop a scale to measure self-esteem in Indian populations?"
So there is self and there is esteem. So always think from language point of view. Just like I said, organizational commitment. So there is commitment. If commitment does not make sense, organizational commitment will not make sense. It only works for people who have commitment to something. But we don't have, we are guided by dharma. We are guided by rin. So commitment is, if you want to call rin a commitment, I mean, this is very tricky. If you understand rin, why do you need to bring commitment? Rin, everybody understands. The most formally uneducated Indian will understand rin. And the PhD in rocket science at ISRO will understand rin. So we don't need to translate rin or bring another word. So self and esteem. So now we have talked about concept of self, Indian concept of self. So now if you think about it, we have physical self. So there will be self-esteem for physical self. Second, I have manas. So I will have self-esteem at the level of manas. Buddhi, I'll have self-esteem at the buddhi level. And if through some sadhana I have at least the direction to understand that I'm not this body, I'm something beyond it, then I may also have some insight about Atman. Now, if we all at least cognitively appreciate Aham Brahmasmi, does the question of self-esteem arise? I'm sure you have heard about the deficit theory, which is negative psychology in the West. The Panchakosha says we are Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, and Anandamaya. I am Anand personified already. I do not need anything. That is why I cultivate aparigraha. I don't need anything. That's why I practice neti neti. So if I am full, as Nisargadatta Maharaj, I invite you to read I Am That. It's 100 dialogues, beautiful dialogue. You'll learn a lot. Nisargadatta Maharaj ji says, once you accept you are the universe, why would you want to collect anything? I am Purna. What is self-esteem? Self-esteem तो deficit वाले का होगा. Then now I'll cut some slack and say, on the path of sadhana, on the path of dharma, artha, kama, moksha, some concept of I am doing okay would be necessary. Where will that come from? Sri Krishna defines beautifully in Bhagavad Gita, dharma aviruddha kam asmi. I am desire. So if anybody tells you Indians are not supposed, are, desire busters, tell them no. Sri Krishna is himself desire. But what kind of desire? Dharma aviruddha. The desire that does not go against dharma. And what is dharma? It will depend on context. Desh, kal, patra. If I am diabetic, my dharma is to avoid sugar. If I am obese, my dharma is to avoid food that will give me weight. If my eyesight is bad, my dharma is to take care of that sense. So I should read it, in bright light and not torture my eyes. So in the process of gaining material wealth, in the process of gaining knowledge, that sense should be valuable. And maybe if we start from defining what is my dharma, so take pen and paper and write answer to mera dharma kya hai. And dharma does not mean religion. Likhte jaiye. So write 20, 30 sentences and then analyze it. And then see if you do well on mera dharma kya hai. अगर आप 20 चीज आइडेंटिफाई कीजिए और 20 में 15 में आप ठीक कर रहे हैं तो आपका सेल्फ एस्टीम अच्छा होगा. अगर 20 में आपको 5 में आप अच्छा कर रहे हैं, मतलब आप अधर्म की तरफ ज्यादा झुके हुए हैं, तो आपका सेल्फ एस्टीम तो नेगेटिव हो गया. अब इसको सेल्फ एस्टीम कहने की जरूरत कहाँ रही? इसमें तो अब सोल्यूशन भी आ गया. सेल्फ एस्टीम को स्टडी करके आपको सेल्फ एस्टीम कैसे बढ़ाया जाए ये नहीं पता चलेगा, लेकिन धर्म मेरा क्या है और मैं क्या कर रहा हूं और क्या नहीं कर रहा हूं, इससे मुझे दिशा बोध भी हो जाता है. आई नो व्हाट टू डू. I was not nice with my mother yesterday. That's one time. I am not nice with my mother every day. Now that is a lapse in dharma. Your mother will thank me today. So all young people should think about what is their dharma toward their parent. They are definitely wishing you well. So I think if we start with dharma, we start with 20 statements, 30 statements, develop a scale, we'll know, the person will know himself herself. It's almost like a counseling session now. And then people will know. And then if we analyze those scales, then we'll know the pattern of where the youth of India is lapsing in dharma. So maybe we'll say that, okay, they are smoking, they are drinking, they are, you can make the list. So India has shifted. I'm not saying, I'm not a policeman. I'm not saying we should not do that. That's knowledge. Now we know. But that also shows, are we happy with it? If we are happy with it, I'm happy with it. Remember, this kal patra means everything will change. We are on a time machine. Nothing is going to be stationary. We define dharma in the context of time. That's why we have Kali Yuga Dharma and Treta Yuga Dharma and Dwapar Yuga. The idea already exists. So no Indian should be stuck on any rigidity. This Kal Patra gives us flexibility. But relentlessly, we have to practice Yam Niyam. Relentlessly, we have to know our dharma and we have to follow that. So self-esteem, you can see, suddenly became a list of what is my dharma, answer that question. And then we will know if we are all positive, then I think we should have self-esteem. But in a different way now we are studying.
Thank you so much, sir. I hope that answers your question, Cheryl Jolly. I'll go to the next question, sir, and it says, how can we begin with the Bharatiya idea, construct, and theory when everything has to be justified by the Western knowledge when publishing?
There are two ways we need to address this. If you want to publish in the West, follow Western literature, follow Western psychology, Western sociology, you will publish. There are Indian professors at all major universities in the world. They get Nobel Prize in their area, they get, all kinds of distinctions. So if that is what you want to do, if that recognition is important, that is what you will need to do. That's very important. You cannot do economics without measuring. And that is why Amartya Sen ji measured poverty. He revolutionized the idea. His work was done in New Delhi, Delhi University. He got Nobel Prize when he was at Harvard, at Cambridge, that's a different thing. But his work was done in India. But you will have to do the work that fits the Western literature. So you have to decide if you want that recognition, that is your path. And don't feel bad about it. I will applaud you. You do what you want to do. Next thing, and this is no insult to anybody. If you continue to do something that is meaningful, relevant for India, the possibility of publishing it in American journal, European journal is very small. So stop being bothered about it. Fortunately, today we have a circle of researchers who are in India and abroad who know what is good research for India. A good research is good research. It doesn't matter where it is published. The idea is the good part. So that's the second part. It is better, the third part. When you do Indian research, you can talk to your mother, grandmother, and they will also understand, and they will also give you some advice, because it's something that everybody can relate to. You talk about self-esteem now, you have to understand English. You talk about organizational commitment, you have to understand English. The context is not becoming clear. So if you want accolade from the West, do what the West wants you to do. There's nothing wrong with that. That's your choice. And if you enjoy doing Indian stuff, you're making meaningful contribution to Indian knowledge system, Indian society, do that and don't worry about the West. You know, Satyajit Ray Sahab, he was so big, his contribution was so profound that the Academy created a special award to honor him. खुद ही को इतना बुलंद कर कि मालिक पूछे तेरी रजा क्या है. I mean, we see this in Satyajit Ray's work. He got recognition all his life. He was a good director, storyteller, photographer, editor. He did everything over the years. You should read about him. It's a wonderful person. He has a red book in which he used to, take notes, express his ideas, how he was going to do it. So the Academy recognized him, and that was recognition for the Academy. Gandhiji did not get Nobel Peace Prize because the British did not support him. Nobel Peace Prize has become lesser because it was not given to Gandhiji. Gandhiji did not become lesser. Did I lose you? Okay, you are. So, if you do good work, do it with Nishkam Bhav anyway, then you are also making progress. You have peace of mind and you should be fine.
Thank you so much for your valuable input, sir. We have the last question by Garima Srivastav. She says, Pranam, sir. It was a wonderful session. Thank you. I have a question related to transsexualism. What Indian knowledge system says about the idea of discrepancy between mind and body? What are your thoughts on this?
So the first yam is ahimsa. And that has to be done manasa vacha karmana. So I will have no negative thought for anybody who looks different from me. Transgender is one way of identifying that difference. You are different from me. That does not create any gap between you and me. If you are in my class, I'm going to look at how you are performing in that class. If being a transgender limits you to understand psychology, I will try to help you to understand psychology. Rise above your own mental block. But I will not assume that you cannot study psychology if you are transgender. I will not assume that, because all that are, you use the word microaggression. You don't need microaggression if you think about ahimsa at manasa vacha karmana. Manasa will appear in vacha. Microaggression is your behavior, body language, everything. That's still violence. So the mind-body gap, I mean, do you want to look at it as gap, or do you just want to look at it as it's always integrated in a unique way? So think about the 5 Pandavas. Each had a different strength, even in the battlefield. So Arjun was best in archery, but Bhim was best in Gada. Yudhishthir was best in Bhala, spear. Nakul was best in Pash. I'm forgetting what Sahadev was good in. Each had also a hobby. So Nakul and Sahadev were good in horse racing. Bhim loved to eat and he also loved to cook. Yudhishthir played Pasa. The gambling part was not, and he was an honest, good player. So Arjun learned to dance when he was, under training in Swarglok. So each individual, you think about Indian concept of self, we all have 5 senses. So the transgender also has 5 senses. The transgender also has manas. The transgender also has buddhi. The transgender also has ahankar. The transgender also has atman. Where is the gap? Where is the gap? Okay, so the gap is in my mind. I am a discriminating person. I am a mean person. I am failing in my dharma. Aham brahmasmi tat tvam asi. So what I am, you are that. How can there be a gap? There is gap in the society, so we need to educate ourselves. We need to educate others with the knowledge of the Shastra and the text, but we also need to practice it. So you can see we have to practice what we learn. Otherwise, the knowledge is not really internalized. So I think no transgender should feel that there is a gap. The transgender is as perfect as it can be. And so if I am not able to see perfection, that's my defect, not your defect, not that person's defect. And so this is how we will think from Indian worldview. If we just run with the gap, then we'll create narratives that fits that. Then we'll go to Brihannala and say, what was Brihannala's experience? Now I'm imagining what was Brihannala's experience. And then I can imagine that he or she was mistreated in childhood, and that's why you kill. I mean, all that is make-believe, because if the story of Brihannala is Amba wanted to kill Bhishma, could not, she had to be the cause of his death. She does tapas, and then she's blessed that you'll be born as Brihannala, and he cannot shoot because he knows your body is transformed, that his problem, and therefore somebody from behind or you can kill him. That is the story. And Brihannala knew the story. This was Amba in a different form with all the memory. So we don't have to make up these things. I think if we start from our own perspective, I really see no reason for any form of discrimination. How can we discriminate against women? When the Niti Shlok says, Yatra Naryastu, actually it is in Manusmriti, sorry, Yatra Naryastu Pujyante, Ramante Tatra Devata, Yatra Itastu na Pujyante, Sarvas Tatra Afalaha Kriya. All actions become futile where a woman is not respected, not worshipped. How can we have discrimination against women? Okay. Now, women can say, no, I don't want you to worship me. I'm happy. I will not worship you. I will not show my worship of you. It will be inside me. But I will show you, I will respect you the way you want me to respect you. That is fine. We can agree on that front. What is inside my heart, you don't have to see. And from that matter, even if I have kalush inside my mind, if my behavior is pure, in organizational setting, social setting, I'm fine. Nobody wants to know what is in your mind so long your behavior is good. So I think this is a profound question, and this is how we have to basically approach questions from Indian psychological perspective, Indian social perspective. And like I said, Marxism does not make sense to me because we never had serfdom. This exploitation is adharma. And so, great writers and movie makers have basically run with the Western idea of Marxism and painted Indian societies. I'm sure there was cruelty, focus on that cruelty, but that can be addressed from the Indian perspective. It is clearly something you are not supposed to do. It is adharma. Not helping, Vaishnav jan to ten re kahiye, peer parai jane re. How can anybody exploit somebody else? That's not the way to live in the world. That's not good for me. You actually had 5 questions. You have only given me 4 if you are.
No, sir, 2 of it said thank you and 1 said
Okay.
pranam. So the questions were 4 in number.
Okay, good.
One on self-criticism and
Yeah.
compassion,
Yeah.
another on self-esteem scale making, one on the idea of bringing the Bharatiya idea and construct into
Yeah.
publication, and the last one about transsexualism.
Yeah.
And you have very well answered all the questions, sir. I'd like to extend thank you to you as well as the chair for the session, Professor Rajveer Singh, for such an insightful keynote session. It will definitely stay with us for much longer. I'd like to, yes, ma'am.
Please go ahead.
Okay, ma'am. So that is what I wanted to mention for this. Ma'am, you may proceed.
Please go ahead. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to conclude and say thank you for all the thank you to all the participants, the chair, the keynote session, speaker, and all the participants that are here with us. We really thank you, sir. Thank you for joining. Thank you for enriching experience. Thank you for sharing it with us. We'll now break for the parallel sessions that are running parallelly. So there you all can join. Thank you so much.
That's
Have a
parallel, Mr.
wonderful day.
Bhawuk. I know it's 3 a.m. और
Yes.
अभी तक आप सोए नहीं हैं.
आप जाएंगे
और-
सोएंगे.
Yeah. जी.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you, Professor Rajveer.
Sure. Sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Yes.